Gemara, we are up to Fidalit Amud Aleph, and the last thing we learned was about that Haman offered 10,000 shkolim to Achashverosh, and the Gemara says that the refuah came before the Makkah by us giving the Machzis HaShekel, and Tosfos explains, which I didn't tell you last time, but Tosfos explains that he offered 10,000 kicker kesef. A kicker is 30 shkolim, so 10,000 times 30, 300,000, and each yid gave a Machzis HaShekel, which is the equivalent then of 600,000, which is exactly the same amount as Haman was offering. But Achashverosh wasn't interested. And the Gemara says that they're both equally bad. One of them had a mound. I'll give an example. There were two farmers. One of them had a mound in his property he wanted to get rid of. One of them had a pit in his property he wanted to fill it. And so they both met, and they both said, you know what, I won't charge any money. Just take my mound and fill your ditch. Now, what exactly that means is l'chayla pidrush. This is pure drush. Is that both of them were anti-Semites, but there are two kinds of anti-Semites in the world. There are those who sometimes you pick up these books and you read it and you see how the Yidden own the banks, they own, they own the entertainment industry, and they own the industrial countries and all that. And you read it, you get so much nachas. Wow, the Yidden are so powerful. That's how we read it. But when these anti-Semitic read it, the Yidden are so powerful, they run our lives, they rule our lives. That it makes them angrier and angrier. And there are others who are anti-Semitic because they think the Yidden are worthless, and they have to be trodden on. And that's what the Gemara says. Haman and Achashverosh are both anti-Semites. Achashverosh saw the Yidden as a mound. He saw the Yidden that they're all powerful and they're competition to him, and therefore he hated them. And Haman saw the Yidden as a hole in the ground, that they're worthless, and therefore he wanted to stamp them out. So therefore they both were anti-Semites, but they were very different anti-Semites. Who's worse? Who knows? So the Gemara continues. We are up to about 8 lines at the top of the page. The king removed his ring and he gave it to Haman. The effect of that ring being taken off Achashverosh's hand and placed on Haman's hand is Yosem more than Arboyim Ushmoin Nevi'im, more than the 48 Nevi'im who continuously admonished the Bnei Yisrael to do tshuva to no avail, and the Sheva Nevi'im, the 48 male Nevi'im and 7 prophetess. Shnisnabu Lehen Yisrael, the prophecy on behalf of the Eden, none of them were effective in making us do tshuva. Ilo Hasodas Tabas, just by removing the ring from Achashverosh, his finger, to Haman, caused them all to do tshuva. So what we learned. Now that we mentioned about the prophets, we are going to digress. Arboyim Ushmoina Nevi'im, there were 48 prophets, the Sheva Nevi'as and 7 prophetess, Nisnabu Lehem Yisrael, prophesied on behalf of the Eden, like Pochasu, Veloy Hesidu. They didn't diminish at all what the angel told them, nor did they add anything. Amashe Kosa B'Teira, Chutz and Mikra Megillah, the only thing that was added on was Mikra Megillah. My Dorish, what right did they have to add on Mikra Megillah? Okay, he has to, complete it with them, Kavuni L'Doidus, but what right did they have to add it on? When we were slaves in Mitzrayim, and then we were liberated. Amrina Shira, we sing songs. Mimisa L'chaim, Haman threatened to annihilate all the Eden. Surely La Koshke. Surely the same thing. So that's why Purim, Megillah made sense. So according to Chassam Sofer, then Purim is actually Mahatera, because it's a Kal V'chomer. According to the Bahag, Chanukah is Mahatera as well, using the same Kal V'chomer. Yehochi asked the Gemara, so Halal Nam Nemahaka, we don't say Halal on Purim. If you say it on Pesach, surely we should say on Purim. So we give 3 answers. Answer number 1. We don't say Hal on a miracle that took place in Chutz La'aretz. Yitzias Mitzrayim, says the Gemara, so how come Yitzias Mitzrayim? The Nesher B'Chutz La'aretz, it took place in Egypt. Heicha Amrina Shiro, how can you sing a song? Says the Gemara, that's different. Why? Because that was pre the days that the Eden entered Eretz Yisrael. In the time we learned, actually, prior to them arriving with the advent of the Eden Eretz Yisrael, Huchshru Kol Ha'aretz L'Leim Shiro. Then anywhere where they lived, you sing songs. Once they entered Eretz Yisrael, that's it. No longer do you say Shira in any other country. That is the view of what do you call it? Of the Gemara, the first opinion of the Gemara. That today in Chutz La'aretz you don't say Hal. Rab Nachman says Kriyasa Zu Halila. Rab Nachman says the reading of Megillah is just is tantamount to saying Hallel. In fact, the poskim will paskin based on this, and so it seems from media as well, that if you don't have a Megillah access to the Megillah, you should say Hallel, because the Megillah is a substitute for Hallel. If there's no Megillah, say Hallel. Rava says a third answer. Over there, but when you say Hallel by Mitzrayim, you're going to say Hallel Avdei Hashem. That brought praise are the servants of Hashem. We're no longer slaves of Pari. By Purim, how can we rightfully say Hallel? Hallel Avdei Hashem, but aren't we still aren't we also servants of Achashverosh? Akati Avdei Achashverosh, we are still servants of Achashverosh, so therefore Hallel will be inappropriate. Comes out from Rava's answer that the reason we don't say Hallel is because Akat was still in Golus, we're still slaves of Achashverosh, and it comes out according to Rab Nachman's answer that reading Megillah is tantamount to saying Hallel. Comes out they both disagree with the first answer that in Chutz La'aretz you don't say Hallel. They think that in Chutz La'aretz you would say Hallel, but the reason why you don't say in these two situations in Purim we gave two reasons: either because we do Megillah or because it wasn't a full exodus. So Bein Rabbi and Nachman Kasha, but Tanya didn't we learn? What about the Brayse? We learned clearly Mishnah once they enter the Yisrael, you can no longer say Shira. So when it answers, they hold that Kivan Shigolu, once they went back to exile, Chazru lehechshed and Harishan. They went right back to their previous state that they can say how. Says the Gemara, so there are 48 Nevi'im in total. Says the Gemara, Basuleka, there are no more, but it says, what about Elkanah, Chana's husband? It says in the Pasuk that there was a person from Ramosim, Seifi. He was a seer, a Navi. We had before in the Gimel base. That manspach tzefim amrum, echad ben masayim tzefim, and we dash in Ramosim is like the word masayim 200. He was one of 200 neviim shenis nabu lehem Yisrael that prophesied to the Yidden. Says the Gemara, me have it too. There were many more neviim as well. Okay, the time we learned how to be in Yisrael. In fact, they were double the number. The Yidden that left Mitzrayim was 1.2 million. Those nevi'as that affects us today were recorded. There were many more than 48. But 48 nevi'im had something to say that's effective today, and all the other nevi'im was something that was only limited to that time, and therefore they're not recorded. They're not recorded at all. So Rashi then goes through here, this long Rashi. So who were these 48 nevi'im? According to Rashi counts from Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, which many of the Shem disagree with Rashi, that they shouldn't be counted, but he counts Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, we know that, Yeshua, Pinchas, and then he brings Sukkim and the Pinchas, then Eli, and then he includes Elkanah, even though the Gemara says that we don't include Elkanah. So it's a bit puzzling why Rashi includes Elkanah. The Gemara says Elkanah is not included because it's not effective today. So I'm not sure why Rashi does include it. Eli, Shmuel, and then goes through a whole list over here, and Avadia, Achia Shaleni, and it goes down all the way down to Hoshea and Amos and Micha and Yeshaya, which we know Yeshaya, and Yena ben Amitai. He puts in that era, and he goes continuing so on and so forth. And the last ones were Yirmiyahu in his time, Baruch ben Neriah, which we'll soon talk about. And the Rashi includes Daniel in the Cheshbon, and then he says he doesn't like Daniel. Take out Daniel and put in Shemaiah. Now Rashi and Gimel and Aleph told us that Daniel was a Navi, but the expression of Rashi there is that even though Rashi says here that even though Daniel was a Navi, but the Lashon of Rashi is that, sorry, 1 second. I'm going to find a second. Rashi says that Daniel was not sent to the Yidden with any nevuah. In other words, he might have been a Navi, but it had nothing to affect future generations, or maybe not even his generation. So Rashi therefore takes out Daniel and puts someone else in. Doesn't mean he wasn't a Navi, but he wasn't from these Nevi'im, from the 48 Nevi'im. Okay, Gemara continues. Now, Shmuel Nachmeni, what exactly would the Ramosim mean? Not the word 200, that there were 200 Nevi'im, but rather Adam haba mishtei Rama. He came from a place, a mountain that faced another mountain that were looking to. So Ramasim is two Ramas, two hills. That he actually is descended from great people. So Ramasim is referring to his ancestry. Maninu, who are these great people? Bnei Kaidach. He's actually a descendant from Kaidach. What do you mean Bnei Kaidach? Didn't they all die? It says Bnei Kaidach, Loi Meisu, the children of Kaidach actually did not die. Tana, we learned. What do you mean it didn't die? It said they were all swallowed up in the ground. So the Gemara says, it says in Chumash, when it didn't die, Tana Mishor Rabbeinu Mokim, there's Batzalan Begehenim, there was a certain place made because they did tshuva. Sometime towards the end, they did tshuva, so therefore there was a place set up for them in Gehenim, but Amdu Allah and Amdu Olav. And they stood over there, so therefore they were spared. Says the Gemara, Sheva Nevi'as, but there were 7 women that were Nevi'as. Who were the women that were Nevi'as? Starting off with Sarah. Sarah was a Navi. Abraham was told, we'll soon see how it goes. Whenever Sarah tells her, listen. Miriam was a Nevi'ah. The Pharaoh calls her Miriam a Nevi'ah. Devorah we know is a Navi. Chana, Elkanah's wife. And we'll bring a proof that each one was a Navi. Avigail, the one who eventually ended up marrying David HaMelech. Chulda, which we'll read about later in the times of Yoash, and Esther. Sarah, how do you know Sarah was a Navi? Just see if it says Avi Milka Yoschel. Yoschel is referred to, so we're referring to here to Sarah, and we call her Avi Yiska. Yiska, and we call her and Sarah is called Yiska. Why is Sarah called Yiska? Yiska is Sarah. The reason why she's called Yiska is that that she was able to see with Ruach HaKodesh. Where do you see that? It says, whatever she says, listen to her. She knows what she's saying. Another pshat that we're digressing, Yiska, people looked at her, that you know why it's called Yiska? Because everyone was looking at her beauty. Miriam, the Chesiva says, it says clearly in the pasuk that Miriam Nevi'ah. So Gemara asks a question. It says in the pasuk, the sister of Aaron. What? She wasn't the sister of Moshe. She said Nevi'as when only Adam was alive. Moshe wasn't born yet, as we'll soon see. What did she say? I see the image of Taylor Ben. She is Israel. She said one day you told the father and mother were separated. One day I'll have a brother who will rescue the Eden. When the house, when Moshe was born, the entire house was filled with light. Father came over and kissed her on the forehead. You're right. Your prophecy was fulfilled. But then when he had to toss Moshe Rabbeinu into the Nile, Father went along and gave her a patch on her forehead. Where's your Nevi'as? It says that she, Miriam, stood from a distance. Ladas, she wanted to know, Ladas, what did she want to know? What's going to happen to her Nevi'as? The Voida, how do you know that she was Nevi'ah? It says, but the Voida, Isha Nevi'ah, Isha Lapidus, the wife of Lapidus. Now we know she was the wife of Baruch and Neriah. So what do you mean she's the wife of Lapidus? My Isha Lapidus, that he used to make wicks for the base of Migdash. There's no base of Migdash then, so it means Mishkan Shilui. She said under a date palm tree, why dafka in that tree? Because there are no branches. And Amar Shimon and Abba Shalom Mishum Yichud. The reason is because of Yichud. And why would there be a problem of Yichud? Because people came to her, as Tesha says, for judgment. Now, Tesha and Baba Kama and in other places has a whole discussion. If a woman is not allowed to be a dayan, how can they go to Devorah? It gives different answers there. Why you were able to go to Devorah, either because of Peah Dibur or because she just told them the halacha, she didn't actually paskin, and so on and so forth. It says the Amdu Shnei Hanashim, only men. But the Chidah, it's brought down in Sinazayin Chaysh Mishpat, in Pesach Shuvah. He says over there that brings a Chidah that a woman can be a Rav. And she can paskin halachas. So he didn't remember that's an issue. So another pshat, Tom is there. Now this it says in Medrash that we actually have the Gemara Sukkah. A lulav is loy leiv, it has a heart. So the Gemara says here, what do you know about a palm tree? Ein loy ela leiv echad. What do we know it has one heart, a single heart? All trees, the sap is the lifeline of the tree. But the sap generally of a tree also goes into all the branches and so on and so forth. But in a palm tree, it does not go into any of the branches. It only stays in the trunk. And therefore it has leiv echad, only one heart. Also the people then, they were all dedicated to the Eibishter, that she was able to inspire all the Eden that they should dedicate themselves totally to the Eibishter. Chana is in the Bible. That's what it says. But it's called Chana. It says in the pasuk that Chana daven b'tomer, as you said, Olatz libi b'Hashem, that my heart is so happy. The Eibishter Roma karne b'Hashem, and that my keren, my horn, is lifted to Hashem. What do you mean Roma karni, my horn? V'loy Roma pachi, say my jug. What do you mean my horn? Because what he meant to say was that David who were anointed with a horn, they had longevity and forevermore. Shaul, the Yehu, they were only anointed with a jug by Shmuel. Their kingdom did not last. Ain Kod, and then we're going to go dwell on some of the other words that Chana said, that she's a Neviah. Ain Kodesh Hashem, there's nobody as holy as Hashem, nobody besides you. Amarav, Yehuda Bamenashe, Al Tikre, do not read it to say, Biltecha Ela Levaloischa, to outlive. Mid was a Maya human, Maisi Yodim Levaloischa, things that we create can outlive us. Aval Kodesh Baruch Hu, Mevala Maisi Elebishta, he outlives everything that he produces. The ain't sur kelekenu. There's nobody as strong as Hashem. See, we touch ain't sayer kelekenu. There's no one that can draw and be an artist like Hashem. What do you mean? Adam because he make a drawing on a wall, then you can't give it any life. Okay, bayim and imayim and innards and intestines. The Eibishter, he makes one form inside another form. And gives it life. It comes alive. Abigail, how do you know Abigail was a Navi? Abigail was the one who was married to Novel that David wanted to kill. What happened was that David, when he became, and Shmuel HaNavi anointed David a Melech while Shaul was still alive. And David wanted protection, he wanted food, and Novel refused to give him because he said, Shaul's the king, I can't give you. David wanted to kill Novel because he treated him as a Meir Malchus. And she went and pleaded her case, or her husband's case, that David should not kill her husband because of, as we'll soon see. And she spoke like a Neviah, and therefore she said something that was a prophecy, and therefore we say Abigail was a prophecy. Eventually, when her husband died, David did not kill him. When he died, David Melech married her. So this is the story. It says the Gemara, Abigail, see what it says, she was running a donkey, the red is Beseis Har. She was going down the concealed part of the mountain, the Seisar Har. What do you mean the concealed part of the mountain? It says Mina. She said came down from the concealed part of the mountain. What happened was that she came and she was going to ask him a shaila about the blood that comes from the private parts of a person. Not Ladam, she took blood from herself and you went over to David. She's a very clever woman. The had Esala, she showed it to David. Amala, he said, and she asked him, is this Dam Nida, is this Torah, not Torah? So Donald said, at night, how can you go ahead and judge the colors of blood at night? She said, you're right. So tell me, how come you judge my husband at night? You're not allowed to judge him by night. Can you judge somebody at night? David said, he committed treason because he didn't want to help me. And therefore, I don't have to judge him. I don't have to judge him at all. And therefore, it doesn't matter if I do it at night. Taisha disagrees with that. That's Rashi's trap. Taisha disagrees. He says, of course, you still need to judge Barim Malchus, but some of the dinim are suspended. But and for example, that they started judging by the din is when you normally judge, you have to wait till the next day before you make a ruling. So it comes to life and death. So the same thing over here. She said you should have waited till the next day. Some of the other rules don't apply, but this rule does apply. So she defended her husband. She said to David, Adayin Shaul Kayim, it's not his fault. Shaul's still alive. Nobody's aware that you're the king. So there's an argument whether she's telling David Melech, even though you are the king, but nobody's aware, so it's not his fault. Or she's saying you can't have, like we have an expression, dabar echad l'doy v'lo shnei dabarim. You can only have one king at a time, and since Shaul is still the king, as long as he's the king, you can't be halachically the king. Either way, and he said, Baruch Taima, Bruchat, your reasoning makes sense, and you're blessed for saving me. Basically, you prevented me by damim from going ahead and spilling innocent blood. Damim tartamashra. Blood is two. Those that didn't rule on your dam, neither, and nor did I go ahead and kill your husband. Then the Gemara says, Ella melamed. It comes to teach you shegilsa as shoika, that she, if you take it literally, it means that she revealed part of her thigh, and David Mel suddenly had this burning desire for her. Holach la'oida gimel pasais, and David such became so enthusiastic, he traveled with those feelings for 3 parsa, 12 kilometers. Amallah, Taisa says chas v'shalom. He says you can't take this literally, that she was a tzadekis, and she did that. And what do you mean that David Mel traveled 12 kilometers? So Taisa actually says that not that to her light, not that she exposed herself deliberately. It meant just that he became very passionate and he had these feelings for her. Amallah, he said to her, Hashmi Ali. Okay, she said to her, why don't we get together? She said to him, this should not be a stumbling block for you. I'm a married woman, and therefore this should not be a stumbling block. When he zois this, as if to say there's a similar incident which will be a stumbling block. Zois miklal dikachrita. There's another incident very similar, married woman. The story of Bathsheba. So therefore we see that she was a Leviah because she alluded to the story of Bathsheba, which hasn't happened yet. Umaskona, says the Gemara. He did stumble with Bathsheba, even though we learned in Gemara Shabbos that David didn't sin because Kol Hayetzil Mechem Beis David Kaisa Get Lishta, they all right to get, but still it didn't look right. Then she said the famous expression that by the soul of my master is bounded up with a living. So what does that mean? To have as if to say we are both bonded together. Something happened here. I mean, I'm married now, so don't worry about it now. But one day maybe. When she actually left him, she went further. She said to him, "The hate of when things go well for you, please remember your mate." No, she actually said, "If one day I'm free, remember me." This is what people say. People say that even while she is going ahead and she's sewing and she is spinning, nevertheless, while she's talking is pilcha. While she's talking, she's thinking about the future. So she already took then the advantage and planted the seeds for the future, in case she's becomes a single woman again. You can other say, Shofil v'ozil bar avza. You see that a kachka, a goose, looks down. Yet the but the eyes are wandering from far away, higher up. In other words, she's thinking about the future. Even while she's talking about the present, she's thinking about the future. Chulda, who was this Chulda, this other Navi? And the Chsiva said, so these people went, Chilkiyo, that's Yirmiyahu's father, and Achikim and Akbar. And what happened was, if you remember that they went into the base of Megilah, they found this Chumash open to Dvarim, to the Teichacha, and he wanted to know, Yeshua wanted to know whether, it was some kind of admonishment to him or just, a fluke that was open on that page. And so he went and he sent a message to Chulda. Says the Gemara, it doesn't make sense. Yirmiyah was alive then. How can she say Nevi'is while Yirmiyah was around? Even though we had more than one Navi at a time, but Yirmiyah was like the superior Navi. So she shouldn't have said anything. She said, go to Yirmiyah. Chulda was actually a cousin of Yirmiyah, therefore Yirmiyah didn't mind. He didn't care if she went ahead and did it and the Vias. How could Yoshi even go to her rather than Yirmiyah? Interesting what the Gemara says here. Women have a lot more compassion than men. And if the Nevi'us is bad, surely Chulda would daven to the Eibishter to try to mitigate whatever the tsaras will be. And therefore he sent to Chulda. Another answer, simply, Yimi wasn't around. Why not? Why wasn't he around? Very interesting. Shaholach, he went. Lahach Aseres Hashvatim. We know that's a cherev expelled or evicted the 10 Shvatim Etzisol. And the Gemara Sanhedrin have a big argument if they ever came back or not. The Gemara here follows the opinion that they did come back. And he went to get the 10 Shvatim. We know the Hadar. How do you know that he went to get the 10 Shvatim? Because it says, to the Pasuk, Yecheskel says that the basement will be destroyed eventually, and the land a seller will no longer get his property back. And now we know we live in Erchin that if the majority of the Jews are not living in Israel, there's no laws of Yevil. And since the 10 Shvatim were evicted, already expelled, already there was no Yevil. So what's he saying? There'll come a time there won't be a Yevil. So it must be that in the interim, the 10 Shvatim came back, so there could have been Yevil, but he's telling them, but it won't be, because it'll be a Churban Beis Hamikdash. If the Yevil is already canceled, what do you mean you're telling them it won't happen? Yimi brought them back. The Yoshio ben Amain Malach Aleim, Yoshio, the son of Amain, ruled over them. It says, and according to the day in the Gemara that says that they did not come back, it means they didn't all come back, but a sprinkle of every single Shevet did come back. He said, Ma'atzin Halos, he says, what exactly is this seeing the sign, the signal over here, Hashani Roy, that I see? The people of the city said to him, this is the kaver, this is the grave of this person's godly person. And he called out these things. What you did on Mizbech and Beis Kel. Shiravam refused to allow the people to go to Shalim, and he built an alternate there in Beis Kel. What in the world does Yoshio have to do with that? Come teach you that Yoshio, who was the king of Yehuda, reigned also the 10 Shvatim. So Yirmiyah brought them back. From here, I'll bring another pasuk that shows that they all came back. But it says, Gam Yehuda, also Yehuda, Shos Kotzilach, also Yehuda, that in Kotzilach, when there was a harvest, is Shoslach, he pointed for you, Bishuvish was Ami, when my nation came back. So we see that what? That the nation came back, the Asaras of the Gemachos came back. Says he more further, Esther, but Esther says, but he came the third day, but we continue now with the Megillah. Came the third day, and Esther donned Malchus royalty. When did she don royalty? Should have said Lebigdi Malchus boy. Should have said she donned the clothes of royalty. It was the spirit of Ruach HaKodesh that she donned. It says here, and it says over there as well. We find when it comes to Ruach HaKodesh, it says that the Ruach HaKodesh also filled Amosai. Omar Ram Nachman, so that's how we know that Esther was in the Ram Nachman said, sometimes arrogance is totally unsuitable for women, even more so than men. Tati Noshi Yehidim, with these two women that were, I guess, overconfident. The Sagin Shmaya, look at the names, Sani Shmaya, the names of animals. Chodesh Maziburta, the word means a bee, and the Chodesh Kakushta, and the other one is Chuldu, which means a weasel. It says, where do you see that she was arrogant? Tishlach, she sent Vatikra Barak, and she summoned Barak. Now, Barak was the Navi as well. So she sent Barak. She sent Barak. Barak was her husband. And she did not go to him. She summoned him. So now the question is, why is that arrogance? It was her husband at the end of the day. And she was the Nevi'ah. She was the Shofet. So what exactly is it that is so arrogant on her part? Not exactly sure. And so that's the story of her. And what do you find by chulda that is a sign of arrogance? Says the Gemara, Kakushta, Ksiba, what does it say about her? It says when Yoshio sent the message to her to find out about the Teichecha, whether it's an admonishment to him or not, she said, Imru li'ish, tell that man who sent you, she didn't say Imru al-Melech. Okay, here you can understand his arrogance. But in the case of the Veda, it's hard to understand. And she called for her husband Baruch to come. So what? Baruch was a general, and she was a shayfet. So why didn't she have the right to call him? I'm not sure. Nachman says, Chulda, who was this Chulda? Her antecedents in the Banu Yeshua, so she actually is a descendant from Yeshua. Here it says in Pasuk Ben Charches. It says the son of Charches, and that was talking about actually not about her, because she's not the son of Charches. It's talking about her husband, and because she's together with her husband, then it seems that it also refers to her. Ksiv Hasam, and there's a pasuk there where it talks about when it talks about Yeshua. It says Timnas Cheres. She went to a place called Timnas Cheres. So the word is very similar. So maybe it's Exer Shavah that she comes from Yeshua. You say that she comes from Yeshua. We learned elsewhere. There were 8 Nevi'im, and all of them were Koinim. And Yatsu Merachav Hazoyna. They were all descendants from Rachav Hazoyna. Some say Rachav Hazoyna means she was a harlot, and some say Zoyna she ran a hotel and she fed them. The Eloheim, the following were Koinim. There were also descendants from from Rachav Hazoyna. One is Neriah and his son Baruch, and one is Sarya and his son Machsaya. One is Yirmiyah, and he was the son of Chilkiah, and one was Chanamel, he was the son of Shalom. So these 4 people and their fathers were Kohanim, and they're all descendants from Rachav Hazoyna. So you're telling me he comes from Yeshua. It's clear they come from Rachav. Rabbi Yehuda says, Av Chulda Hanaviyah, sorry, and Chulda says also, Mibnei Baneh Sherachav Hazoyna Isa. That Chulda is actually descended from Rachav, not from Yeshua. Here it says in the Pasuk Ben Tikva, it says over here, again, the son of Tikva, we're talking about a husband, that also refers to her. And there it says, as Tikvas Chut Hashoni. And it says there that the tikva of the red rope, he said to her that you should put out a red string from your window so we'll know who you are. We're going to spare you and anybody's inside the house. Amalei, so Nachman said to him, Eina Saba. He said to this person who gave the first opinion, who said that they come from Yeshua, he said, Eina Saba, but others say he actually used a derogatory term. He says, Pasya Uchma, you dirty, you black Kaylee, Mini Umenach, from my saying, and you're saying, Tistayim Shmaita, will get to the truth. I said, says that she comes from Rachav Hazoyna, you say comes from Yeshua. The truth of the matter is, the Gaida, she was Megayev and Nospa Yeshua. Yeshua married her. I mean, you think about it, amazing. Yeshua, who took over from Moshe Rabbeinu, married Rachav Hazoyna, who might have been a harlot, and she was a Giedis. Anything can go wrong. She had all the defects, all the flaws, and Dafki Yeshua ended up marrying her. Tayz already asked, "Now I marry anybody from the 7 nations. How in the world did he marry Rachav?" But Tayz answered, even though she lives in Israel, she was not a member of the 7 nations. Says the Gemara, so you're telling me that they all are descendants of Yeshua and Rachav? Me have a lay Zadal Yeshua. Yeshua didn't have any sons. But see, it says Nun B'nai Yeshua B'nai. It says Dirayamim that the end of the line was Yeshua. He didn't have any sons. And so the Gemara Bonei Lahavi, he was punished. He didn't have any sons. B'nai Bonson Havale. He did have daughters. Says the Gemara. Bishleim Inu. We know that Yirmiyah, Hanamel. We know that 4 of them, Baruch and Sariah, they were all Nevi'im. We know that. Baruch ben Neriah. We don't know what Neriah was. Yirmiyah and Chukiyah. We don't know what Chukiyah was. And Hanamel ben Doidi. We don't know about that. Or ben Shalom, whether the Shalom was a Navi, or Sariah. Ben Machsaya, we don't know Machsaya was a Navi. Says the Gemara Bishlam, Inul Miflish said they were Navim. El Avasayim and I know that their fathers were Navim. Says the rule of Kiddulah, whenever there's a name of a person and it also traces his ancestry, his father. And we know that one of them is a Navi, Navi ben Navi. We know that he is a Navi and his father also was. Shmoi v'loy shem Navi, if it only says the Navi's name without the father's name, Yidua shehu Navi, v'loy ben Navi, but the father was not a Navi. Shmoi v'shem, if it says his name and the name of the city where he comes from, the footage b'Yidua shemoy's ears, we know that he comes from that town. But if it says Shmoi, v'loy shem, there's a Navi, we have no idea where it comes from, which city, the b'Yidua shem Yerushalayim. And generally speaking, they come from Yerushalayim. And we'll just continue 2 more lines. But a similar line. Whenever we have a name of somebody and the name of the father or the grandfather, then the rule is as follows. If one of them, the Torah says something very nice about, complimentary, to Tzvanya, the son of Cush Gedalia, and we know Tzvanya is tzaddik, but Yidua should tzaddik ben tzaddik, and we know nothing about his father or his grandfather, we can automatically assume that they're all tzaddikim. Of the Choshet Parla Kosab Echem Legenahi, if the Torah says something derogatory about one of them, even though we know nothing about the father or grandfather, we can automatically assume they're also Rishayim. Kigoy Vahiba Chodesh Shvi was the 7th month Tishrei. Bo Yishmael ben Asanya ben Elishama. He came and he killed Gedalia, and Gedalia was warned about him, but he was so innocent he couldn't believe that a Yid would kill him. So it said that Yishmael, the son of Asanya, son of Elishama, came in and he deliberately killed Gedalia. We know they were all Rishayim. B'Yidua shehu Rasha ben Rasha. They were all Rishayim. Okay, we'll stop here and continue tomorrow night in Mitzvah Hashem.